Batter up! Welcome to No Bunts, the show for the casual baseball fan on the Athletic Network. I'm Tass Mellis. With me through the power of technology is JD, making the magic happen. Unfortunately, we're not in the studio today, not in front of that beautiful Blue Jays pennant and baseball cards, which would be so fitting. The coronavirus, it is relentless. It's causing some issues. It may be novel, but it is everywhere. So apologies if this sounds a little bit different, but no one will want to hear from me today anyways, because we have an incredible guest with us, Jayson Stark, baseball writer for The Athletic and host of the Starkville podcast, part of the Athletic MLB show. He's been writing for baseball for about 40 years. We've got him on this day that we've had a huge trade deadline. The Hall of Fame baseball writer also was writing for the Phillies when I was, just coming up as a baseball fan in the 93 World Series. So we'll get to that. A pleasure to have you on this day, Jayson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Tad, it is a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, I listen to you on the pod all the time. You and Doug do a great job, and
thank you.
We're very lucky to have you on here. Before we get into the trade deadline, a sad day because we lost a legend on Tuesday. Legendary Dodgers broadcaster Vin Scully passed away at the age of 94. The best storyteller I know. Scully brought life to those Dodgers broadcasts for 67 seasons from 1950 to 2016. Jayson, your thoughts on the legend?
Well, I've had a lot of thoughts on this, Taz, because legend doesn't even begin to describe Vin Scully. A few years back when I was still working at ESPN, I did an oral history on Vin. That was one of my favorite pieces that I've ever worked on. I talked to 27 different people who knew him, and the stories were spellbinding. They were amazing. But I came away with this thought. Like, think about this. Who else in our lifetime, maybe anyone's lifetime, has had a period of greatness that spans 67 years? Like Bruce Springsteen's been great for a long time. Okay, Paul McCartney's had a good run. Queen Elizabeth, good work by the Queen. But
yeah, she's the Queen, sure.
Who has done what Vin Scully has done in a way that connected with all of us, with so many people? This is literally a man who lived a one-of-a-kind life. And waking up to that news today, just incredibly sad.
It is. And such a pure spirit of the game. And that is just, it's not replicated. And as you said, the length of it, obviously not replicated as well. So looking forward to going back and reading that piece that you did on Vin, because everything that you write, we read here on the No Bunts, No Dunks network. That's what we do. You like the weird and wild parts of the game, which is a perfect fit for our show. So that's what we do here. I won't ask you about basketball wedgies today. I'll just ask you about the trade deadline. And let's start with Juan Soto, the 23-year-old superstar. It happened. He went to the Padres. The future Hall of Famer, as everyone says, got dealt for 5 prospects and 1 major leaguer. Let me put it to you simply, Jayson. You said Juan Soto, whoa. He isn't just the biggest deal of the day. He is the biggest deal of any day. So simply put, why is the Juan Soto trade so historic in your eyes?
Yeah, I actually have a longer story about that today in The Athletic. And I think your question was simple. The answer is simple. There's never been a player like Juan Soto who has ever been traded at any deadline ever. I know this will shock you, but I really did look.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, it all starts with the fact that he's 23 years old. I go down these rabbit holes, and one of the things I did was I looked at the rosters for the Futures game a couple weeks ago in Dodger Stadium. There were 20 players in the Futures game who were older than Juan Soto, and he's already on his way to the Hall of Fame. I did this a couple of different ways, but one way was I looked at all the players in history who had a 140 OPS plus, meaning their OPS was at least 40% better than the average players of their time through age 23. Now, Juan Soto is 60% better. He's at 160. But just to be fair, I looked at everybody who was at 140 or better, and only one of the players, this is in the live ball era, changed teams before age 28. That was Miguel Cabrera, and he was 2 years older than Juan Soto, didn't get traded at the deadline, and that deal didn't even come close to this deal. So there's that. I also looked at Juan Soto's got 119 career homers. You know what the most home runs ever by a Hall of Fame position player who got traded at his age or younger was? About 22. So he breaks that record by over 100.
That was Roberto Alomar, right?
Roberto Alomar is correct.
Yeah, well, I read your column. I wouldn't have known that. I mean, that trade was kind of formative for me in my in my baseball life. That made the trade that obviously turned the Jays into World Series winners. I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, that trade was epic. That was Joe Carter and Robbie Alomar going to the Blue Jays and had that work out.
Yeah, pretty well.
Even that was a December trade, and even that was not Juan Soto trade. So when you're trading a player at 23 who has 3 pennant races left before he can become a free agent, and he's had basically Ted Williams' career, shouldn't a guy like that be part of a trade that people will look back at and say, biggest ever, most historic ever? It makes total sense to me. And that's what happened.
Yeah, so going the other way, 5 prospects and 1 major leaguer, as you're seeing it here on YouTube. Now, the major leaguer I mentioned because it was originally Eric Hosmer that was supposed to be part of the deal. And I saw on Twitter as this was happening, the realization that, Eric Hosmer has a no trade clause. Is he going to nix this deal? Is he going to say, no, I'm not going? And then Juan Soto all of a sudden goes back to the Washington Nationals. Well, it was soon realized that even if he executed his no trade clause, that the deal wouldn't be nixed and the Nationals would just throw somebody else into the trade. So he did execute it. He is going back to be part of now what seems to be a World Series contender. So that was just a funny moment. Luke Voigt filled that void.
He filled the void? Is that what he just
filled it? He did. That's
the void and the void. Yeah.
So did you think when you saw that Hosmer news that the deal was going to be canceled, or were you well aware that, unlike a newbie like myself, that somebody else was going to be thrown into the trade?
No, there was definitely a brief moment where it looked like that was a big roadblock. It didn't last long, but part of the motivation of the Padres to move Eric Hosmer was not just that he had no place to play once this deal went down, but that if they could move his money just for this year, it could keep them under the luxury tax threshold. But then when it became obvious he was not going to Washington, they just looked at each other and said, we're doing this anyway. And they're going over the threshold. It'll cost them a few extra $1 million. They're good for that. They're good with that. Eric Hosmer winds up in Boston. Hope he'll be happy there. It's crazy, though, all the different pieces that have to fit into the puzzle when a huge trade gets made on deadline day. So it's hard to know as you're trying to cover this stuff and follow this stuff exactly what little wrinkle is significant and what's just a blip on the radar screen. Luckily for everybody, that one turned out to be just a blip and not a roadblock.
Right. Yeah. It turned around pretty quickly. Yeah. Luke Voigt jumping in there. And then, as you said, Hosmer getting dealt to the Red Sox for Jay Groom, which was, it was hard to follow. I mean, it was a lot of pinballs happening throughout the day. And I mean, back to the Nationals, because as you said, it sure feels like Juan Soto is on the Hall of Fame path. He plays the right way. He's got the eye, he's got the power, he's got it all. But at the same time, people are applauding what the Nationals got back with the 5 prospects, Mackenzie Gore, who Keith Law labeled as a number 1 or 2 starter down the road, 3 position players who could legitimately be all-stars, and C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel III, and James Wood, and then an 18-year-old who throws heat upwards of 100 miles an hour in Harlan Susana. So those 5 prospects and Luke Voigt, they trade Juan Soto, again, a Hall of Famer, as you said, with 3 years of certainty that he could be with the team. Did they trade him at the right time, and did they trade him for enough, Jayson?
Well, the right time that's a fascinating question in and unto itself. But when you look at the return, Taz, I think there's universal agreement. This is the best deadline trade ever made. It might be, in terms of value received by the team making the big trade, it might be the best trade ever made at any time.
Wow.
They got 5 young players who all project as all-stars. That never happens. I honestly don't remember anything like that. I mentioned the Miguel Cabrera trade, and that it's really fascinating to look back on that one now. It's 15 years later, and Miguel Cabrera gets traded for Andrew Miller and Cameron Maybin primarily. Those 2 guys were still playing in the major leagues last year, right? So they did get 2 players back who kept playing in the big leagues for 15 years. So by most definitions, they did great. Mm-hmm. But that value did not equal Miguel Cabrera, because how could it? And that felt like a reminder that when you trade a player like this, you never get enough. So with that in mind, it's very possible that none of what the Nationals got back equals Juan Soto, what he is, what he's going to be. But if you have to trade him, which they felt they had to do from every standpoint, then they did an incredible job of setting the bar and forcing at least one team to clear that bar and get an amazing return back.
Yes. They went from the Washington Nationals did from the 24th ranked farm system to the 8th ranked farm system. I don't know how Fangraphs does it, but they rank the farm systems live as trades happen. So reading that and hearing your opinion on trading a superstar and what you get back, I got to feel somewhat good for the Washington Nationals, who everybody seems to be, I don't know, down on is the word, but the fact that they, for the uninitiated, they win the 2019 World Series. And since then, Anthony Rendon, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, now Juan Soto, Bryce Harper before the World Series title, they are just breaking it up slowly, but maybe they did it at the correct sort of point here in the timeline of the MLB. And I hate to be a basketball guy that relates it back to basketball, but it kind of reminds me of what's happening in the NBA, where teams are willing to give up a lot for established players. We just saw 4 draft picks go for Rudy Gobert in the Minnesota-Utah trade. So do you see that as a change from, your experience covering baseball, where here we are in 2022, where teams may be willing to sacrifice more of their future for the present?
When you say teams, that implies multiple teams. I don't see that. One team? Yes, the Padres are obviously that team. When you read off those names of those Nationals of yesteryear, that was a team with star power. It's what AJ Preller is trying to build. It's really easy when you're running a team to be seduced by stars, but when the stars are 23 years old like Soto, 22 years old like Tatis, even Manny Machado is only 30, correct? That's a team that's going to be together for a while. The stars are going to be great for a while. And in AJ's mind, that was a price worth paying. He doesn't think the way the rest of the industry thinks, though. He really doesn't. It's always interesting to talk to GMs this time of year, especially the ones who are trying to sell. And the frustration of many of them is that teams now use these valuation models. Everything's very scientific. It's like a math equation. What am I giving up? What am I getting back? Am I winning the trade? Am I losing the trade? If I'm losing the trade, I'm not doing that. And that's really how most teams think now in an age when you can quantify everything. And one of the reasons I think we've all been speculating that the Padres would be the team to make this trade is not just that they had the system, they had the players, they had the young pieces that they could trade, but it was going to take a certain level of emotion by the general manager making the deal to ignore the valuation models and ignore the way most teams think to trade for Juan Soto. Like me personally, to trade for a player like this, it's worth it because you almost never look back and think it was a mistake to trade for that guy at that age. But it's not how most teams think. Hey, the Cardinals are the perfect example. The Cardinals had the perfect match with the Padres. If they chose to make the deal, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. The valuation didn't add up for them, but AJ doesn't care about that. So he's atypical. He's not a model of where other teams are going.
So I'm a little perplexed as to the state of the Washington Nationals. What are they doing? What can they do to rehabilitate their image? And is there any chance that they move back to Montreal? I kid about that. I'm just promoting our T-shirts. Just we're just peddling. What's that?
As well, you should.
Yeah, we're just peddling some T-shirts.
Put them on the screen. See if anybody notices.
Listen, we decided that we do a little throwback, no bunts in the spirit of the Expos logo, and of course some Blue Jays. Why the heck not? But I need to know, like, what is their plan? Why have they gone from World Series champs to giving up all those stars, as I mentioned, and can they recoup their image with their fans?
Yeah, that World Series was what, a little over 33 months ago? Doesn't it feel like 33 years ago?
Yes.
That team led the league in star power. We've been through the names a couple times now, but it's hard not to think about what it felt like to walk into that park, especially back in 2018 when Bryce was still there. They had Harper and Soto and Scherzer and Trey Turner and Anthony Rendon and Ryan Zimmerman. I've been around a while. I can remember when Steven Strasburg actually used to pitch. and now, depending on what you think of Strasburg, they have none of the above. They let Harper play it out and walk. They let Rendon play it out and walk. They let Ryan Zimmerman play it out and retire. They did make the big Max Scherzer trade Turner deal. As a nice little deal, but I would say the opinion of most people in the sport is they didn't get enough for those two guys. And so their only road back to relevance now is to win. I don't see any other way that they re-engage that fan base. I have a lot of friends who are Nationals fans who live in DC, and they're crushed today. Juan Soto was the last reason to go. And even he wasn't exactly packing the house, but who are you going to see now? It's for real hardcore baseball fans. It's cool to go and see young players grow into whatever they're going to be, but they're going to have to win. And how long is that going to take? Think of how the Braves are positioned. Think of how the Mets are positioned with Steve Cohen's money. Phillies are pretty formidable. The Marlins have the deepest crop of supersonic young arms you'll find anywhere. How far behind those four teams are the Nationals? So this is going to take a long time, which means not just to win, but to be relevant.
Was that what factored into Hosmer's decision to say, no, I'm not going there?
Well, I think it's safe to say there was a reason he put them on his no trade list. To go, hey, Washington's a wonderful place to live. I don't know if it's a wonderful place to govern, but it's a great place to live. But for Eric Hosmer to choose San Diego in the free agent process, be this close to playing in October, and then have to relocate across the country and play it out for a team with no prayer of winning. I can understand why, if he had the right to say no thanks, he would say no thanks.
Right. So he goes on to another situation there in the Red Sox. But let's stick with the Padres there for a sec, just to complete the list of moves that they made. Other than getting Juan Soto, they are absolutely going for it, as you said. They also got lefty Josh Hader from the Brewers, which surprised some people because, the Brewers are leading the NL Central, but decided we've going to save some money and I guess rely on another closer. Is that the story there?
Hey, that's another trade that literally has never been made in the history of baseball. Josh Hader was averaging more than 15 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings, and he had 29
That's a huge
saves.
number.
That is a gigantic number. All right, the history of deadlines, since the modern save rule came into effect, there's only been one other closer with 20 saves and an average of 15 strikeouts or more per 9 innings who got traded at the deadline. That was Craig Kimbrell last year. And maybe you can refresh my memory. I don't think the Cubs were in first place at the time. Pretty sure they weren't. And so that's like the deal. It's not just trading a player like this. It's a team in first place trading a player like this. And at first I looked at the return and I said, well, that's okay. And I understand that's what the Brewers do. It's how they think. It's how they have to operate in their market. The more I reflect on it since, the more I've talked to people in baseball about it since, it really rubs me the wrong way. What was the Brewers' formula to scare people in October? And again, they're in first place, so they're going to probably be playing baseball in October. And that formula was 3 or 4 starting pitchers who could dominate you for 6-7 innings, and then Devin Williams, Josh Hader at the back of the game, drive home safely. Thanks for playing. You weren't going to touch those two co-closers at the back of the game, and now they've messed with that formula, and I don't think got enough back. Didn't help themselves offensively, which is their big area of vulnerability, and really altered their identity and their path to potentially winning 1, 2, 3 series in October. So I'm still having a hard time with this one, and I'm not alone. It's not playing well in that clubhouse or with that fan base or really across the sport.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. And as a fan getting back into the game, I was wondering if the expanded playoff format this season would produce more buyers than sellers, as sort of the thinking was going into the deadline. And that Brewers sort of lateral monetary move was odd. I saw the Orioles trade Mancini, and they're just above 500. Saw the Giants around 500 not go for it. So were you surprised more teams didn't go for it at the deadline?
I really wasn't. I'm not saying there weren't some teams that surprised me, but I went through this a couple of minutes ago. Teams right now operate so scientifically, and they do the math on everything. A team like the Giants is a great example. Theoretically, they're still in that race for the last wild card spot. They obviously weren't catching the Dodgers. But theoretically, they were still that team. Realistically, their playoff percentage was so low that it made no sense to hold on to everybody and go for it. It's a little more attractive to be a wild card team and play a best of 3 series than it is to play a 1-game win or go home, which is, it's incredible theater, but it's incredibly painful to lose that game and see your season end that way. So that definitely played a part in some of the teams that we saw buying. But for a team like the Giants, Farhan Zaidi is as sharp as it gets. He could do the math. So to add, to keep some of those players, it just didn't add up. I know they didn't wind up trading, say, Carlos Rodon, but that was a complicated contract because he has an opt-out and a $22.5 million option. So I had several teams that talked to them, say, hey, I'd love that guy in my rotation, especially if we're going to play games in October. But how do I value him? I'm probably only trading for him as a rental, but he's not being priced as a rental. And if he picks up that option for next year, that probably means he's hurt or something happened to him. So it was impossible to figure out what you should give up for a player like that. And the Orioles too, they're run by Mike Elias, who came from the Astros. They think very scientifically. They've had an incredible storybook year, and it's been fun to watch them creep back into some kind of race and be at 500. But their time is not now. Mike Elias knows their time is not now, and he was willing to trade the most popular player on his team, Trey Mancini, because he got something back that helps them. They added, if I remember right, 6 prospects for Mancini and Lopez, and they already have one of the best systems in the game. They're coming. You can see the future, but it wasn't this year.
Yeah, that hurts. That hurts as sort of a casual baseball fan, because I see the stats, I see the storylines of these teams like the Baltimore Orioles, sort of on a parallel, the Seattle Mariners, who obviously went for it. I just, going into August 2nd, I just expected more teams to go for it. But as you said, teams are thinking on different timelines and a different way than, I guess, the Padres obviously were thinking, because their time is now, I suppose, with them absolutely going for that. They also added Brandon Drury from the Reds, who's a utility guy. I know our Eno Saris has projected them now as a top 5 team using his formula. So in your opinion, are they a top 5 team? Are they a serious contender? Are they on the same level with the Dodgers now?
I don't think they're on the same level with the Dodgers, because the Dodgers are just so deep and can beat you so many different ways. But the Padres they're right there. There's not really an area of defined weakness on their team other than maybe the bottom of the roster, but the rotation is leading the league in quality starts. So they don't lack for starting pitching. Their bullpen now has the most dominating closer who ever lived in Josh Hader. The middle of their order, once Fernando Tatis Jr. comes back, will have Soto, Tatis, and Manny Machado, who can all do damage against good pitching. Heck, they're all, I would say, headed for the Hall of Fame if they keep doing what they're doing. Does that sound like a World Series team to you? It does to me.
Yeah.
The one issue is they're still in a position right now where in the first round, they'd have to play a best of 3 against the Braves, all on the road. And that's to go for it and find yourself in that position is a little frightening. But all the guys we mentioned, they're all back next year. So their future is really bright.
I guess I live in Atlanta, so I saw what happened last year. I saw that second half run. And if this was 12 months ago, right after the trade deadline, no one would have expected the Braves to do what they did. And although a 3-game set in one team's ballpark is, it's daunting. I do love the fact that there is an expanded playoff format and an expanded first round. Anything could happen. So I am looking.
Yeah. Like, hey, one of the things that I think I came away with from the deadline is, the good teams almost all got better. And there's such a class system now in Major League Baseball where you have this group of 8, 9, 10 teams that are all potentially really good. There are a lot of teams that could win the World Series. Then there's this huge drop off to so many other teams in the sport, especially the teams that sold off yesterday. But there are, if I look at the 2 leagues, there are multiple teams in each league who could win the World Series. So October is going to be really fun.
And just to follow up before we take a quick break, are the Brewers in that second class? Because They are leading their division, but they did give up Josh Hader. I know you're perplexed by it, and I'm just confused seeing a team on top of the division and what they did.
Well, they're still going to run a closer out there in Devin Williams, who I think is up to 30 scoreless outings in a row, something in that neighborhood. So, assuming Freddie Peralta comes back and he's what he was, they're not going to be a fun team to face in the postseason. They'll be a tough out, but are they a World Series team now? I don't see it. They're still offensively challenged. The scariest part of their team is diminished. They're in position to contend now for multiple years, and that was part of what they were up to. I understand that that's the thinking, but they took a step back, and I'm not even convinced that they're going to win a division, because the Cardinals look like a playoff team to me too.
Right. Yeah. And they went after it yesterday. We've got to take a quick break, Jayson. So on the other side, a little bit more of the quirky stuff that we like to talk about here.
Yes.
Perfect. Right in your wheelhouse. We'll be right back with Jayson Stark.
Peloton. It isn't just about bikes and treadmills. It's a team of instructors ready to motivate you 24/7. With Peloton, there are literally thousands of classes ranging from strength training and yoga to running, boxing, which means Peloton is the perfect non-judgmental space to experiment with new types of movements at a level and a pace that feels good for you. But what if you're super busy? It doesn't matter if you have 5 minutes or an hour, if you're an early riser or a fan of the evening burn, there's a Peloton class that fits into your day. You might be just looking for a 10-minute upper body stretch between calls, a 30-minute run before bed. Peloton is where you'll find what works for you on your schedule, wherever you happen to be, at home, at the gym, in the Classic Factory here. JD, I mean, you got nothing to do this afternoon. Do you mind if I jump on the bike and have a little spin class after this?
Hey man, have at it. I was on that thing this morning right before you got here.
Great.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I need to shed a few of these holiday pounds that have found their way to the midsection here. And this is the best part: the music, absolutely iconic. If you're in the mood to blast 90s hip hop, or I mean, it was a bit like us rocking out the karaoke in Vegas.
Oh yeah, Take It Easy. I took the Take It Easy ride. It's Take It Easy 5 times in a row with Cody Rigsby. That's not a thing, but I would definitely go on that ride if I could.
Running down the road trying to listen, my lord. I got 7 women on my mind. Oh, man, I could sing that all day. Maybe I will now. Whatever you're into, Peloton has the music that will get you moving. Motivation that moves you anytime, anywhere. Try the Peloton bike or tread risk-free for 30 days. Learn more at onepeloton.com. That's ONEPELOTON.com. New members only. Terms apply.
We're back with Jayson Stark of The Athletic. All of your experience, Jayson. I've got just a quirky random question, because we like to sort of peg guys in these particular baseball sort of cubbies, these baseball holes. I want to know the ultimate utility player that comes to mind when I say, because I mentioned Brandon Drury there from the Reds, and I guess that's what he's going to be doing for the Padres. But back when I was watching more baseball, I thought Tony Phillips was the ultimate utility guy, and that's what he was. Is there a guy like that? And throughout the history of MLB, is there one that jumps to your mind? Because I'm going to trust you no matter what you say. He will now become my ultimate baseball utility guy.
Okay, before I answer this question, what got you thinking of this one? Brandon Drury? You were thinking on deadline day about Brandon Drury? Just because he was a former Jay? Is that what the deal was there?
Oh, I didn't even know he was a former Jay. I actually had no idea.
It went fast.
Oh, okay. No, because he got thrown into the Padres, and I don't know if there's a particular position for him with the Padres. I thought he would be sort of bouncing around.
He will.
So, but he doesn't classify. He doesn't meet the utility player.
The ultimate utility player. All right. The other question is, I guess, how are we defining utility player? Was Babe Ruth a utility player?
Wow.
He pitched. He played the outfield. I know they threw him at first base every once in a while.
But you threw Babe? No. I couldn't. You couldn't, right? You could.
No,
I don't know. I guess that's not a category anymore. Not that it was a category, but like just somebody who didn't have, I guess, a permanent position, and maybe that doesn't exist.
So Craig Biggio was not a utility player, right? I know he went catcher to second to center to left, but it's not like he was playing all of those at the same time.
Yeah,
I think that's your definition.
Yeah, I think so.
So Tony Phillips was a great name because he was the first super utility player that I remember who played that many positions that well and was a regular player without a position. But the ultimate super utility player has got to be Ben Zobrist. Had a season with the Rays where he played first, second, third, and short, and left, and center, and right. And by wins above replacement was almost a 9-win player. We had never seen that. We haven't seen it since. Joe Madden loved having Ben Zobrist on his team because he could play him anywhere, and he was great everywhere.
I think that's the ultimate answer. Does that fit the Tampa Bay Rays MO? Right. Okay. So
they didn't invent versatility, but they're definitely big fans of it.
Great. And I see amongst people watching here on YouTube, the Bleacher Creatures, as we call them, Gavin Grossman chimed in. Zobrist, the GOAT utility man as well. Yeah. And he was the World Series MVP.
Yes, for the Cubs.
For the Cubs, right.
Not for the Jays, as we know.
Not for the Jays. and listen, I inserted Tony Phillips into this conversation because he was a Blue Jay as well.
I know. I'm just messing with you, man.
No, I love it. I love it. I wanted to try and figure it out because, baseball is just so unique in that way that you can do all those things. But yeah, that was great. Thank you for schooling me on that.
You're welcome. I mean, think about the NBA. Can anybody play point guard and 2 guard and center and small forward and
not really
the 2? No,
not really. It just doesn't work defensively.
That's the 4, right? That's the 4. Sorry.
Yeah.
My number's backwards.
I mean, like people will throw out, LeBron sort of can do it, but he doesn't play the 5.
Yeah, Magic kind of did it, right? But he wasn't really a 2 guard ever.
No, that's a good point. I was going to say he wasn't a 5, although he came on in the finals and did that. But yeah, he wasn't a 2.
What would be spectacular would be if the NFL had utility players. So a guy played quarterback for one series, and then he played right tackle in the next series, and then he was blitzing linebacker next series. I don't think we're ever going to see that, right?
Probably not. I immediately think of Cordell Stewart when you say that, because he did a little of that, but never was an offensive lineman. Or no, guys just don't play both sides of the ball, right?
Anybody who did would be a fantasy superstar. But just one of the cool things about baseball is to have somebody like a Ben Zobrist. That is possible in baseball. It really is not in the other sports.
Well, getting to one guy who does play both sides. You mentioned Babe a little while ago. This is a casual baseball fans show, so I have to ask about Shohei Ohtani. Even though he wasn't moved, there was some chatter about him potentially moving. He signed through 2023. I'm just curious what happens with the Angels because they traded their closer here to Atlanta and Raisel Iglesias, for a 26-year-old pitching prospect. They made a couple other moves with the Phillies, trading Noah Syndergaard and Brandon Marsh for Mickey Moniak and Sanchez and catching prospect Logan O'Hoppe. Great name. So it seemed like they are kind of trying to pull off what the Nats are doing around Shohei Ohtani and an injured Mike Trout. But can you give us the background on what the heck the Angels are doing?
There's a big difference between the Nationals and the Angels. Obviously, ownership signed off on trading Juan Soto. They're looking to sell the team. It made sense to clarify that situation economically. And it's just the time for them to blow it up and rebuild. Why are the Angels in a totally different situation? You mentioned the magic name, Mike Trout. They're on the line to pay Mike Trout $37 million a year now through 2030. And so unless you're convinced that Mike Trout's never going to be the same, then their mission now is the same as their mission going into this season, last season, and every season since he's been there. And that is figure out a way to get Mike Trout to the postseason sooner than later. And so I know I heard a lot of people say, yeah, well, that means you should trade Shohei Ohtani. Not if that's your mission statement. If the only way you can justify trading Shohei is A, we know he's going to leave in a year when he's a free agent, but B, we still need to figure out a way to put the pieces around Mike Trout, is to trade him for difference-making players who can plug into your big league team. Who can make that deal at the trade deadline if you're trying to win? I don't see how it's even possible. So I think what's likely is when the offseason comes around, we'll be talking all winter about Shohei and what they might do and where he might go. Because in the offseason, you have more flexibility to make a trade like that and then see what you get back, supplement in free agency. You can't replace Shohei Ohtani, though, because he's the face of your team. He's the reason to go, to watch, to pay attention. And so it's really sad to think of the Angels not being able to keep him, but I think he's kind of made it clear to them. He wants to win. He doesn't see them winning. He's going to leave when his contract's up, so they're going to have to do what they have to do. They just couldn't do it on August 2nd.
Wow. So it's inevitable that he won't be there
is it
next season.
I mean, I think it is. Look, there are a lot of places he doesn't want to go. He chose the Angels for a reason. I think he likes the idea of playing in someplace that's a little more laid back. Maybe San Diego would look good to him too. I don't know. Yeah. LA, something like that, Seattle. But there's still the challenge for Perry Minasian to potentially build a better roster around Trout and Ohtani, pray Rendon gets healthy, and to go for it again next year and convince him it makes sense to stay. He's a really hard player for any GM to trade, for any owner to trade, because you go down in history as the guy who traded the unicorn, who wants to be that guy.
And Soto was able to return or get 5 prospects in return. Shohei Ohtani is incredible on both sides. So what the heck do you trade him for? I think that probably helps out the Angels in some regard that Soto got that return.
See, what did the Red Sox get when they traded the Babe to the Yankees again? Was it theater tickets? There's no equivalent return for Ohtani. There's no model, there's no blueprint for what you should get back when you trade a player like that. There also would be just 1 year left as opposed to 2.5 years left, 2.25 years left. So that's a big difference too. If they trade him this winter, they'll get good players. I'm sure of that. But are they going to get what the Nationals just got from the Padres? It's impossible. No way that happens.
Okay, I don't want to do it, but let's just briefly talk about the Yankees because the rich got a little bit richer. As a Jays fan, I don't want to talk about what they did, but all in all, getting Andrew Benintendi for their outfields, Frankie Montas for their rotation, a couple bullpen guys in Scott Efros and Lou Trevino, and then they snuck in Jordan Montgomery to the Cards just before the deadline for outfielder Harrison Bader, which brought up some questions. I know our Chris Kirshner was wondering why they gave up on pitching depth for another outfielder. But as the best team in baseball this season so far, I got to ask, what's your view on what the Yankees did?
Hey, Brian Cashman's really good at his job. He orchestrates a deadline as well as any front office person who has ever done that job. I mean, that's the highest praise. You just see how he attacks the deadline. He's great at it. Montas, Trevino, Benintendi, Bader, Efros is a good piece. Got rid of Joey Gallo and the money, and only had to give up one top 5 prospect. That's incredible work. That's the front office equivalent of Peyton Manning walking up to the line of scrimmage and reading the field. It's what Brian Cashman does so well, and he does it every deadline. He's really one of the best ever at it.
Yeah, I hate to hear it, but yeah, they look great. Listen, I'm cheering for Aaron Judge as he gets closer and closer to Maris's team record, and it'd be nice to have somebody in the 60s. Other than all the steroid era hitters, other than obviously Roger Maris and Babe to do it. But is it your opinion that he's going to get there to the 60s with the tear that he's on?
He hits 10, 12, 14 homers every month. That's a good formula for getting to 60. And I hope he does, because wouldn't that be the best story in sports every night? As Aaron Judge closes in on 60, 61, 62, and I don't know if there'll be a beyond, but the thing about 61 is, let's ignore the debate about whether it's the quote unquote real record. It's the American League record. It's the Yankees record. If he became the third Yankee ever to hit 60 homers, along with Babe Ruth and Roger Maris, and then headed into free agency, I'll take that plot line. Because even when the season ends, the plot line continues. Are they really going to watch him do that and then say, you're not really worth the money? They're the Yankees.
Right. Yeah, he bet on himself, obviously, and sure seems like it's going to pay off. I have to ask, though, because you get into the weird and wild in your column, and you break it down. Roger Maris's 61st home run was in their 163rd game, technically, right? They played an extra game that season. Yeah,
sure.
Okay, that's fine.
So you're asterisking? Is that what
I'm asking about the asterisk. Is it an asterisk or not?
All right, this is the reverse asterisk question, because he lived with the asterisk of Babe did it in 154. Now we have a reverse asterisk that he did it in 163.
Well, I mean, he got the extra game, I suppose.
It's just one of the quirks of baseball.
Okay.
I mean, no. I'm not going there with you, man.
No, don't. No, you're the person I had to ask, because you break down by game and the numbers in that way. And yeah, it's an interesting tidbit. I had forgotten about the Babe in 154 that they played back then. So that was he's got an asterisk. He's got the reverse asterisk.
Yeah, asterisks everywhere. If you choose to apply them, they're all in your head anyway.
So I cover basketball. We have asterisks all over the place. People throw titles, asterisks on titles. The bubble playing in Orlando being a huge one. Seasons that they started late because of lockouts. So there's an asterisk on Tim Duncan's first title. I mean, it's endless. You're right. It is in your head, and as you choose to apply it. One thing before you go, one thing that it seems like baseball is correcting, and I want to know if you think they will next season in terms of the shift restriction, putting a restriction on the shift, because as a baseball fan that's come back to the game, watching three guys on one side of the infield seems to be an issue for MLB as they try and sort that out through minor league experiments, as you wrote about recently. What do you think happens with this shift? Is it changing in MLB for 2023?
Yeah, I've written about this a lot and watched it in action, watched some of the shift limitations that they're working with. And I would say it's close to 100% that there'll be some kind of shift limit next year. What's likely is two things, which is no more infielders in the outfield. So no more 4-man outfields or 7-man outfields or whatever Joey Gallo thinks he's dealing with. And 2 infielders on each side of second base on the dirt. Is somebody who's done a lot of research on the impact of those changes. Keeping the infielders out of the outfield, that works. It does. Nothing bugs left-handed hitters more than rocket over the second baseman's head and the third baseman's out there in right field and catches it, or bullet goes right through the infield and there's another infielder out there 50 feet in the right field grass to throw him out. I think in an age where we need more action, that's an important change. 2 infielders on each side of second base. The data shows that's made almost no impact. And that's why the story I wrote recently where baseball is experimenting in the Florida State League with the pie slice, it makes sense. So the pie slice means if you're trying to restore the single up the middle, but the second baseman or shortstop can play literally right behind the bag, and the other infielder can be positioned so scientifically with such precision that we know exactly where you're going to hit the ball and somebody's going to be standing there anyway. That does not move the needle. But if you force the second baseman and shortstop, I'll try to imitate the pie slice here on the screen, to play 10, 20 feet, depending on how shallow they play, to the left or right of the bag, that does theoretically restore the single up the middle. So that's a possibility, but I doubt it's a possibility in the big leagues next year because it's only being experimented with in the Florida State League for half a season to see what happens. So they get a feel for whether there are unintended consequences of that and how the mechanics of it work. It is something to watch down the road, though. Much like the replay rule where they tried it out and they tweaked it as they went along over a 3-4 year period. I think that's what you could see with the shift rules. The other sports do that all the time. They try something. If it works, they keep it. If it doesn't work, they tweak it. That's what baseball, I think, is going to do over the next several years with the shift.
That's great to hear, and interesting to hear that 2 infielders on either side of second base didn't change the ball hit up the middle, being played whatsoever. So it is interesting, and I guess something a little further down the road, as you said, because it's just in the Florida State League and it's just being applied now, as you wrote about recently on The Athletic, which was a great read. But it makes so much sense. And then even pulling the ball in between 2 infielders can still be played differently if you're in favor of defense and being able to put 2 guys wherever.
Yeah, it's that's the part of this that people don't talk about much is if you regulate the shift, you're valuing and restoring infield athleticism, the ability to cover ground and make a great athlete play becomes so much more valuable than if you can just put players wherever you want. This is the equivalent of it's 3rd and an inch in the NFL. So teams know you're going to run. So they're 10 players, 11 players at the line of scrimmage. Baseball's shifting is based on the same principle. We know if we throw you this pitch in this count, in this quadrant of the strike zone, we know what you're going to do. We know where you're going to hit it. Somebody's going to be standing there. If you change that, you're restoring the importance of having somebody playing, say, second base who can cover more ground, make up that territory that you're losing by not shifting, and have the arm to throw a player out. Right now, like if you can put Mike Moustakas at second base because of defensive positioning and the ability to just station a bunch of players on one side of the field, you're not valuing that. So no disrespect to Mike Moustakas, but he's kind of the poster boy for how shifting has changed the way teams think about defense and who plays where.
That's very, very interesting. I mean, one of the most exciting plays of the All-Star game was in the first inning when Andres Jimenez went up the middle and turned that double play. And he was, that was, just playing outside the pie, I suppose. He wasn't playing right up the middle, but that was amazing. And I was showing my wife that, even though she's not a baseball fan. I said, "Did you see that play?" She said, "Oh, that's cool. Are they amping it up because it's the All-Star game?" I said, "No, they're just extremely talented, and Mike Moustakas shouldn't be playing there."
And shifting isn't really much of a thing in the All-Star game. There was a little of it here and there, but just it's not the Pro Bowl. But they don't do the precise type of defensive positioning in the All-Star game that they do during the season.
No, he had to go up the middle, and we saw a great play.
Everybody strikes out anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I won't ask you about the strikeout increase, the power era, and the pitch clock potential, because I do want to know about that stuff. But people can hear about all that stuff on the Starkville podcast, and I won't take up any more of your time because this was a long couple of weeks for you. You were just at Cooperstown to watch Big Papi get inducted. I'm sure that was a blast for you. But we really, really appreciate you coming on, Jayson, and giving us some of that knowledge that you got stored up there. Thank you so much. And obviously, everybody check out the Starkville podcast and Jayson Stark on The Athletic.
Taz, this was great. Really enjoyed bantering with you, man. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much, Jayson. Really, really, really appreciate it. All right. That is it for us. Make sure you check out everything else we did this week. It was a really fun week. Graydon Gordian talked to the guys from the Red Flags podcast about the Hungary highs and lows from that race. That was pretty fun. We saw Lee talk with Kelly Dwyer, OG Kelly Dwyer, on the show. He popped some packs with KD. LE with KD. That was fun. And make sure you tune into Is This Good coming up later this week with Matty O hosting. Yes, Matty O hosting a show about random topics being good. Is that going to be good? I think so.
I think it's going to be great, Tassie.
I do think it's thanks for coming back on here, JD. And let's peddle those shirts because it's this is the No Bunts show. So the Expos logo within the No Bunts logo, and of course, got to get a Jay shirt on there by Breaking Tea. Two beauties. Check out nodunks.com if you're interested in either of these. I know people really love them. The nostalgia factor for the Expos logo. Got to get Ariel Helwani in one of them, but yeah, they're great.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, that's it. It was awesome to have Jayson Stark on. It's unfortunate we cut him off there. That's the nature of the beast here.
It's a live show, man.
I see you, JD, in right on the desk there in our seats.
Yeah, I got the moose, I got the Jays pennant, and I got my Nova Scotia hat. So represent.
Wow.
You know what'll go great with this outfit? These awesome Canadian T-shirts.
Very Canadian. Made by an American company in America.
Right.
All right, that's it for us, Clipper Bros.
You heard it here first. Have a great time. Turn up. Love you guys. Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, no matter how bad your team is, there's probably a team that's worse, like the Seattle Mariners, who haven't made the playoffs since 2001, the longest drought in all the major sports in North America. I didn't realize that.
Wow.
Longer than any hockey team or football team, or even the Sacramento Kings and any basketball team. So, keep your head up. We'll see you next time.